Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, episode number 69. Jared Scheffler and Snooking for Whitetails. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Pat Howard, Covert Scouting Cameras, Wildlife Surveillance Specialist. And you're listening to my number one favorite podcast, Jay and Dusty, on the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chris Bieber, Technical Director at Carbon Synergy, and I'm listening to my favorite podcast on iTunes, Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hey, this is Dr. Carl Miller, and you're listening to my favorite hunting podcast on the internet, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hey, this is Jay Scott, your host of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. What's going on? How'd you like to talk some deer hunting today, some bow hunting? And first, before we get to that subject matter, I'd like to talk Dusty Phillips. Dusty, are you over there?
I am here.
What's happening?
You know, it's the rut is just around the corner.
Rut check.
Rut check.
Are you seeing a lot of deer movement right now?
You know, it's picking up. The crops are coming off here in Ohio, and that you know, that's phenomenal. Acorns are plentiful. The crops were plentiful, and hopefully they didn't leave too much corn in the fields, and they're going to keep hitting these acorns because that's where I'm set up this year. I'm trying to hunt in the woods and try to catch the staging areas of the big bucks before they hit the field. So, you know,
yep, I hear you.
I am hunting hard at hunting, and hunting hard.
Same here. Hunting hard, and I am most intrigued with our guest tonight, and you may want to second guess your tree stand setup this year after listening to this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think that we're going to learn some things that is a little bit out of the comfort zone for most.
Yes, this is outside the box of hunting. So I guess the most important aspect of what our guest is talking about is that you don't ever really get comfortable, ever.
Yeah, you don't make a dedication to one particular buck to kill.
Yep. Don't get emotionally attached to a spot or a buck. That's one of the biggest tips he's left us with. And the person that's joining us tonight, or on the Big Buck Podcast today, is Jared Scheffler from Whitetail Adrenaline.
Let's talk to Jared and get him on, because I'm so ready to hear this.
Yeah, Jared is a phenomenal deer hunter if you've never seen his videos. But we go deep with Jared on this interview, so stay tuned.
It's all about the snooking.
The snook. We're going to learn all about snooking right here on the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
This could be a first.
Yeah,
snooking.
Don't miss it. Let's get Jared on the line.
Let's do it.
Jared Scheffler, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. How are you, my friend?
Good. How about yourself? And thanks for having me.
We're doing pretty good, man. Dusty's out in Ohio. I'm in New Hampshire. And where are you right now, Jared?
I'm actually in my garage right now.
In your garage. And whereabouts in what state are you in?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me what I was doing in my garage.
Okay, well, I want to know that after. Yep, I definitely want to know that.
Well, actually, the reason that I'm in my garage is we're getting all ready tomorrow. We're actually heading out of state for about a week, but we're going to do a completely new adventure, something we've never tried before, and I'm not going to give away too many details,
right.
But we're going west, and it should be a real good time.
You're going west. All right, so you're trying something you haven't tried before. So, I mean, you guys do some pretty funky stuff, and that's why I wanted you to join here. I've actually you are one of the very few people that I have had email requests from our listeners to say, I want Jared Scheffler on your show.
Oh, well,
Isn't that interesting?
I'm very humbled to hear that.
You know, of all the people that are out there, I don't think I very rarely get a request to have somebody on as frequently as you.
Oh, really?
Yep. And I'm not joking.
Well,
it
are you
is
trying to make me blush here or what?
No, I'm not trying to boost your ego or anything like that. But I literally have had one, two, three requests. I said, you have got to go watch Jared's videos, and then you have got to get him on your podcast because they're doing some stuff that you just don't see. And
Sure. Yeah.
I want to learn more about how you do it, why you do it, and all that kind of stuff, and see if we can break it down and maybe get other people to try what you do and give us some tips and pointers on how you do it. Because I got to tell you this, some of the videos I've seen blow me away. I just stuff, you're outside the box, which I love.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's a culmination of a few different things. For people that maybe aren't familiar with, our video series and what we do each year is we target specifically lands that are open for public hunting.
Okay.
And this will actually be the 5th season now where we have hunted exclusively, on foot, on the ground, in more of more of an aggressive, like still hunting, stalking whitetails, getting ahead of them type of fashion. So it does get a little chaotic at times, a little crazy at times. But I want to go back to what kind of made us, want to do the public land series.
Let's talk about public land. So why public land in the first place?
My cousin Jim and I we're kind of the main people at the beginning here in the videos, and we've been hunting buddies for a long time. We grew up hunting private land and by permission stuff. We both grew up on farms. Had a lot of neighboring farmers. Oh yeah, go ahead. But essentially we hunted a lot of public land too. And then we did that until we got old enough and kind of went. You get out of high school and you move on or whatever. And I myself actually acquired some really good land in Buffalo County, Wisconsin that, I was blessed to be able to hunt there, and it was great hunting and I enjoyed it and I had a good time. But part of that for me, and this isn't the case for everybody, but for myself and my cousin who had some other land that he, hunted, it didn't really have that adventure in that new place kind of. There's something about like what's over the next hill, what's around that corner. I've never been there before. There's something about the mystery behind that it's addictive.
And you find that you find that on public land and not on private land. Is that what you're saying?
Well, and I think the only reason that you don't find that maybe so much on private land, or we didn't, is because we were hunting just one or two places. Whereas with public land, you have more acreage than you and I could ever get to across several states, or even in my state of Wisconsin.
Right.
I'd have a hard time getting to all of it. So you've got an endless amount of opportunity there with acreage and hunting different situations, whether it's hills or marshes or creek bottoms or whatever. You can pick a new spot every day if you want.
Right.
You can go many, many years. And we really like that mystery behind not knowing what's there. We don't do any pre-scouting. We don't do any running cameras. Not because we don't think that those are great techniques or methods or tools. We just partly we're still busy with other things going on. Myself running the business, and then most of the other guys, they've got full people. Just it's life. You've got a lot going on, and it's hard to get out there. But also we really, like I said, we like that mystery of not knowing what's there, and it just seems like it's a little bit more exciting when it does like come together, and it's like, whoa. It's hunting season. I've got my bow in hand. I've never seen this deer before. And it's just it really gets you kind of wound up, I guess.
I can.
So that's
a
little bit. Go ahead.
I do understand where you're coming from, and Dusty, chime in here anytime. Is that when you're hunting a new piece of property the first time, and there is a very special situation there every time. The excitement, you're sky high. Usually, I mean, there's an adrenaline in that. Well, your show is Whitetail Adrenaline, but yeah, there is an adrenaline there that you don't get if you know the land every time, unless the deer comes there. But just not knowing the land is an adventure in itself. I feel exactly what you're saying.
Right, and I guess to kind of maybe utilize a couple of analogies here, it's kind of in some ways like every time we step into a new piece, it's almost like stepping into a new vehicle, or or, you know, in the dating world, you know, the bliss can wear off after a little while,
right.
You know, but every time you meet a new girl, there's always, you know, or you go on a new date, there's always a bliss period, you know, and it, you know, that's kind of a little bit how it is with when you're going into something new like that. You do have that excitement, and that's, you know, exactly what you described there.
Do you date women quite often, new ones, or?
No, I actually don't. I'm single most of the time and non-dating most of the time. I'm just all over the place. So I didn't. Maybe that was a bad analogy to use. But
hopefully there's no female huntress out there that was interested in you, because I think you just pretty much shut down your dating for a little while.
No, I don't think there's any of them interested in me.
Are you so you're an eligible bachelor? Is that correct, Jared?
Well, I'm just so all over the place, and you know, whether it's on the road to shows or during the hunting fall, that I don't think they'd be interested very long.
So your whitetail comes before ladies, is that correct?
Well, I don't want to say that. You know,
okay. All right. All right.
What are you going to do?
I haven't met the right one, maybe yet.
Right.
Gotcha.
What are you going to do when you find one that likes the whitetail hunt more than you do?
Is that possible?
That likes the whitetail hunting more than I do?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a one day at a time kind of guy, I guess. Well, not all the time, but you know, like I'm just gonna take that. If that happens, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
All right. Fair enough. All right. So back to whitetails. Enough about ladies. Let's get back to whitetail hunting. So you guys, is there a core group of you that makes up your band of hunting friends?
Yeah. There's only about 5 to 6 of us, but there's really, I'd say there's really about 3 or 4 of us that are, you know, there, you know, for most of or a lot of the footage.
Okay.
You know, the bow stuff, Shea Peterson and myself, the last couple of years have really kind of taken that, and I'd say that he's, you know, along with myself, the main characters within that production. And then my cousin, he's, I'd say, the main character, along with Scott Meska. He's been with, you know, hunting with us for the past 5 seasons, and you know, we're all just, you know, really good friends. We get along really good. You know, we don't have like flare-outs and arguments, you know, too often. You know, and even
Sure.
if we do, we don't. It doesn't build up. So you know what I mean. So we get along great, I guess. And I think that's really important, and we like to keep it small like that. There's a lot of people that, you know, we'd like to go hunting with, or we think we might have a good time with, but it's really hard to produce keep the content what it is, you know, and make sure that we have, you know, that group camaraderie and having a good time, joking around. It's just, we like to keep it small. You know, we haven't had any issues there. So.
Gotcha. How long have you known each other?
Well, you know, like my cousin Jim, obviously we've known each other all our life. And then, Scott, I've known him for 5 years, and, Shay for about 4 years. And, it seems like, I mean, Shay and I, we hit it off so well that people think we're brothers when we go to shows all the time. I mean, hundreds of times we've been asked, because, you know, not only do we kind of look somewhat, we have some similarities, but we get along like we're brothers. Like, you know, we give each other a hard time and take it, you know. So, and then my buddy Al there, that's in the videos, we've been friends since high school. So
Gotcha. All right, so you guys have some history together, and
you bet. Yep.
When did you have you always hunted from the ground? That seems to be like one of your things, to be on the ground. Have you always done that, or is that something newer than what you used to do?
Sure. No, I haven't always hunted on the ground. I've exclusively hunted on the ground since the start of 2010. But I've hunted, the first time I can remember hunting on the ground was when I was 16, and there was a public land piece, and I spotted 2 big ones out in it, and it was all grass. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to lose. I'm going to go out after them. And I never got them, but I got close enough to taste the you know, the success. Yeah. And you know, in maybe if I was experienced as I am now, I probably would have gotten it done. I blew the shot, but of course I've blown shots in recent years too. But
Sure.
But,
we've all blown shots. Well, I don't know if Dusty
What's that?
has, but we've all blown shots. I don't know if Dusty has. Well, I certainly have.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's part of hunting. If you say you haven't, then I think you're telling a fib.
Right, I agree.
Right.
So so the ground hunting kind of something that you grew into. Was it at that one moment that you decided that I'm going to do this from now on?
It was really a culmination of a couple of things. One thing is I had always loved hunting on the ground. You know, just my weapon, the simplicity of it, just I spot that deer and I'm going after him or getting ahead of him. And even before the videos, I'd say that I shot most of my deer on the ground. But yet I hunted out of tree stands more. It was only in certain situations where I would do that. And it never really dawned on me because I was kind of stuck in this paradigm of doing what I had done for so long, and that is play the cat and mouse with the tree stands game. And it dawned on me after our 2009 season. That was our second season of exclusively public lands, and we had been getting a little bit more aggressive. I realized that, and I'm like, you know, it seems like every time we get aggressive, you know, we get better results. And then I like it better just from even if I didn't film, that's how I'd hunt, you know. It's really got nothing to do with the reason why I would do that anyways. I think I'm addicted to that type of hunting.
Sure.
But also, we knew we had to step up the level of content and the amount of action, and we wanted, you know, public land is what we enjoy hunting and doing, and we also only had one camera. So I've been there for everything we've ever filmed, usually running the camera, but sometimes as a hunter too. I'm a little bit of from a producer standpoint, I'm a little bit of a I like to control it, you know. I like to be there. Whether it's running the camera, it's almost like I have to be there. It's hard. To keep the flow and the story the way that I want, and to know that it was legitimately filmed on public lands, or, you know, lands open for public hunting. We've always kept it that way. But in order to step up that level of, you know, the amount of footage we needed to get to say, hey, why would somebody want to pay $15 to buy our DVD to watch four or five deer get, you know, shot? You know, we just felt like we needed to figure out a way to ramp that up. And so we just decided, hey, you know what? The footage we thought was cool or two on the ground, you know, or new and fresh, and it would captivate people. So we said, you know what? Let's just take a whole season and just do it and see what happens. Well, we did that, and it was a significant, you know, rise in opportunities and encounters and everything. And ever since then, it seems like every year it ramps up even higher. And I feel like it's almost got to a certain point where some people probably question whether it's legitimate or not.
Sure.
You know, but, you know, I mean, when people watch the videos, they can see, you know, we have situations where we have game warden stops and different things come up, you know.
Right.
So I think at the end of the day, I mean, I would be a fool to not keep it legit, because eventually I will get caught, and then you know, it wouldn't be good.
Right.
So
now, is the bow also a piece of this whole strategy?
The what?
The bow and arrow. Are you using just bow and arrow, or are you most of the videos I see is bow and arrow, but on occasion there's a gun thrown in. Is the bow and arrow on the ground part of the strategy too? Yeah,
absolutely. The bow, that's what I prefer. So I would say, you know, in our earlier videos, it was probably about 50% bow, 50% gun, but it's gotten the last couple, 2 to 3 years, it's been more bow footage than gun footage. Our gun stuff is more about, you know, 3-4 buddies getting together, really small orchestrated drives typically, and we try and capture that group camaraderie, having a good time. You know, a lot of people do like that, them small little deer drives we do. That's kind of how we go about it on the gun side of things. I know, Jay, you do some tracking in the snow, which with your bow as well, which I find really, really intriguing and difficult at the same time. And my hat's off to you for that.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm being super successful at it, but I do enjoy the hunt that way.
Sure, it's addictive, but you've gotten some that way too, haven't you?
I have, yep.
Well, that's all that. I mean, I'd say I don't know what the rate is, but more times than not, we go after a deer and we don't get it on the ground like that. But
Right.
I think if every time we went out there to stalk a deer, if we got it, it wouldn't be as addictive. We
Right.
wouldn't have that challenge.
Did you think it's an advantage being on the ground, or now that you know what you know, or do you think there's more
Absolutely.
of it? It is. Okay, interesting.
Yep. I believe so, for a few different reasons. From a public land aspect, the biggest thing about hunting on the ground is we can efficiently get it in and out of places a lot quicker. So let's say I go on a new adventure, a new state, or even a state I've been to in the past, and let's say I've got 3, 4, 5 days. Well, if I've never been there before, or if it's been a year since I've been there, chances are things have changed a little bit.
Right.
And maybe, whether it's private or public, spots go hot and cold all the time. And with public land on the ground like that, when we get into places and they're cold, we just keep moving. We don't wait for them to get hot. We just keep moving until we find those hot spots. And, typically we do find them a lot quicker than waiting for a spot to get hot that maybe was in the past. I feel like on the ground, a person has a lot more control of the outcome of their season. Now, if you're hunting, say, 20 or 40 acres or something like that exclusively throughout the year, it's going to be kind of hard to, keep hunting that on the ground, still hunting through it without blowing all the deer out and whatnot.
Right.
So I'm talking, on a aspect where you have quite a bit of acreage or you're targeting public land. I do feel that. And I also feel like, and I've noticed this especially in the last couple of years, I've had more and more people be like, I spotted this buck and I did exactly like you guys did. I climbed down from my tree stand. We did that way back in the day before we did exclusively on the ground. And I went after this buck, they say, and sometimes they get them, but a lot of times they get close enough to taste like, man, if I'd have just done this one thing differently, I would have got that deer. And all of a sudden, it's almost like they explain it. It's almost like a light bulb. They're like, I never would have, I would have never thought that I could sneak up on deer like that before. So I think more people have the ability to effectively hunt on the ground than what they maybe give themselves credit for or believe, So
I think that's kind of the mentality, is that you hunt from a tree stand or from a distance because you don't think you can get that close.
Right.
Generally speaking.
Absolutely.
No, how do you guys know when you're in a hot spot?
Usually that is determined lately it comes down to a visual usually. I keep still hunting through a woods. Let's say it's a woods, or doesn't matter what the terrain is. Almost always I'll be still hunting through that piece. And unless I spot one, I just keep still hunting and I keep moving. Except for the rare occasion where I notice, lots of fresh, super insanely fresh tracks and just the sign, and you just have that feeling like, hey, if I park it here, and a lot of times in those situations it might be something that I've only got 45 minutes of light left and I come across in the woods and I'm like, you know what, I've walked a lot of this is the best thing that I've seen in here. I've only got 45 minutes left. I'm just going to park it right here for this remaining 45 minutes. But a lot of times I keep moving until I get a visual. That's what I'm typically going for, is a visual, because once we have a bead on them, usually getting within bow range isn't the hardest battle. It's usually pulling off the shot, because a lot of times when you got two guys out there, we film everything on the fly. We don't go back and refilm anything. Right. So you get two guys out there that exposed. It's very hard to get. You can get within bow range, but by the time you get that clear shot, it's like as soon as they give you the clear shot, they're spotting you as well.
Gotcha.
And that's one of the trickiest parts, I think, about hunting on the ground, is just simply pulling off the shot. There's a lot more variables, and you have a lot less time to process the information when a mature buck is, snaps his head to look at you, and it's like now or never. You can rush shots. You can forget to aim low. You can do all those things. And I mean, that you knew not to do, but just because of the time that you're dealing with, you maybe don't think about it,
right,
or process it as quick. So
I'm gonna back you up just a little bit. Can you explain when you say you're still hunting through the woods? if we got a listener that may not know what that means, can you kind of break that down a little bit and tell us what you mean when you're still hunting through the woods?
Okay, when I'm still hunting through the woods, recently we've called it snooking. We sneak and look. Sneak and look around. It's kind of an inside joke, but yeah, snooking. Yeah, we sneak and look. We're going to go in here and sneak and look. We're going to go snooking.
Let's go snooking. I like it.
Yeah.
A new term right here on the Big Buck Podcast once again, Dusty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We love
snooking.
It.
Well, it's Shea Peterson originated that one. That wasn't from me. I just stole it from him.
I love it.
But and he's the main character in our bow video here. But basically, when I go still hunting through a piece, I'm not really all that still a lot of times unless I get that feeling or I'm coming across stuff where I feel like I should slow it down. I gauge my speed, how fast I go through a piece, by what I am seeing and how I'm feeling about it, which there's no way that I can really describe that and say, well, you should walk this fast or that fast, because I think it's important to, the more you do it, I think the more you gain a sense, just like with anything, the more experience you gain with it, you gain a sense of feeling for what to do in certain situations. And I think, a lot of times we'll cruise right through a piece pretty quickly because maybe it doesn't feel right or doesn't look right to us, but if we kept at a really slow pace the whole time, we wouldn't cover that ground that we need to.
So there's fast snooking and slow snooking.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There's fast and there's slow. And, when you get into a spot where you just you get that gut feeling, hey, I feel like I should slow it down, or I feel like there's going to be deer just up ahead, that's probably the time to do the slow snook.
Gotcha.
Now, yeah.
I know you said it's difficult to describe. Because it's almost like you have to trial and error experience it to understand it. Can you slow it down a little bit and take one of your hunts, take it down to a 5-minute thing, when just kind of walk me through what's going through your mind as you're starting to see the things you like to see. Can you kind of close your eyes and visualize that and explain that?
Okay. Let's talk about a hunt that happened last year. It's got a few different things that I like about it that's going to add some value here, I think, for the people listening, is we did a hunt in Iowa. And we utilized this boat, right? Mm-hmm. And we would use this boat to access different spots, public along the water. And there was a spot we got into. We spotted a big buck down in right away. And, we tried to make a move on him, didn't get him. And quickly just pulled out of there. We knew the spot was cold, right? So now we're going a lot quicker. We're getting out of there. So we motored, jumped back in the boat, motored to another place. All right. Actually, before we got even onto the boat, we spotted a doe just inside the woods with a couple of bucks. All right, so we had a visual right there, and although they weren't a shooter and they kind of ran off, we quickly got out of the boat and just tiptoed in there a little bit, and pretty soon they did circles back. We knew they were kind of in the area. This was kind of during the rut, so that was a case where we kind of, slow snooked, I guess you could say. And then
slow snooking.
Yeah, eventually they kind of went off a different direction, and they were kind of out of there, and like I said, I had the tag. I wasn't interested in shooting either one of them. So then we slow snucked for a little ways over this next ridge, not in the direction that they went. We didn't see anything necessarily that made us feel like we should keep going at that slow pace, so we quickened it up some. And we spent probably a couple hours in that. There's, I don't know if it was probably 100 acres of timber right in there, so we spent a couple hours, making a loop through it. We had never hunted it or been in there before, well, then it's about, we've maybe got 45 minutes to an hour of light left. Okay. We've kind of fast went through this and realized that, it wasn't worth hanging around for the rest of the evening. So we jumped back in the boat and we're motoring along and stopping the boat and glassing stuff. And we spotted, a big one about 3/4 of a mile away, up on some public. And so we went, and obviously now we're in fast mode. Okay. So that didn't work out. It got dark. It just never worked out. The next morning we go into that spot, the original spot where we had almost got this one that we played a move on. Well, we got in there before sunup this time, to set up rather than still hunt, right?
Yep.
And shortly after sunup, a few hunters actually trickled in. And here's a prime example of how easy it is to just relocate when you're on the ground like that. All I had to do in this case was grab my bow and let's get back to the boat and go to the next place. We're going to leave this for these guys.
Gotcha.
I'm not here I don't emotionally attach myself to places or deer. And that allows, and not just myself, but any of us, we've gotten really good at that, where we just keep moving and we don't, just because a spot was hot yesterday doesn't mean it's going to be, or just because it's hot today doesn't mean it's going to be tomorrow. And so, in this case, 3 hunters moved in, and they were spooking deer the whole time they were coming in. We were, well, where are these deer running from? Well, they showed up. So we quickly just got out of there, and we went and motored, 3/4 of a mile away to some timber. And we had actually been in that piece a couple of days before that and seen some smaller bucks run around or whatever. And we just, so we kind of knew from those sightings, and it wouldn't have mattered whether it was 2 days before or right that day. We kind of knew that there was a decent amount of deer within that woods somewhere, probably. We just had that feeling, and we had seen them in there. So here's a case where we went at kind of a slow to medium speed, where we're taking maybe 4 or 5 steps, and we're looking the whole time we're taking those steps, and they're slow steps, and then, not stopping, but 4 or 5 really slow steps, watching while you're walking, and then we stop. A lot of times I'll use the binoculars in the woods and glass the woods, and we did that for probably an hour. And then I spotted a small buck laying down up ahead, and pretty soon we rattled in 3 bucks and almost got a shooter. And rattling is something I usually don't do. In this case, I didn't have a big one spotted, but I figured there was a reason he was laying there, so I tried to draw something out. There happened to be. But we never got a shot. We made a big loop. We didn't give up there. We said, okay, all right, there's something up on this ridge. Let's make a big loop and get up there.
Gotcha.
And because there's too many bucks congregated there. So here again, we kind of, in the spots where we could pick up the pace, we did. Where we knew we weren't, we're trying to get way up, on the spot where we suspect they are, we're going as fast as we can. Once we have one spotted, what we do is we move as fast as we can when we're able to, if that makes sense. We want to close that distance as quick as possible.
What does that mean,
You're
able
only going
to?
to say they're certain. What's that?
What does that mean when you say able to?
Let's say the terrain allows us, like, okay, we're going to make a loop on this deer, and there's no way he's going to be able to see us or hear us. While we're making that loop, we're going to run whatever we got to do to cover that distance as quick as we can, because he's only going to stay where he's at for so long, whether that's 5 minutes or 5 hours. And there's been multiple times where I look back and I'm like, 30 seconds too late or a minute too late. If we'd have just ran there or went a little bit faster, and we could have, there's no way he would have, seen us or heard us, we would have got there in time. So we always try and cover that distance when we're able to as quickly as possible. Okay, getting kind of back to the story. So we're coming up on this ridge, and we sensed that there was something up on this ridge. So here's where we're like going ultra slow now. We're taking, maybe a step and then looking for 20, 30 seconds, and then maybe another step, and glassing, binoculars, we're handicapped without. That's one thing that it's almost like a must, for our style of hunting. And it didn't take very long. And in fact, we spotted a big one with a doe, and then the game began. It was a very difficult stalk through this low brush timber, and it ended up taking a total like 8 hours to sneak in and stalk this deer.
Wow. And
most of that time we were within 100 yards of him. There was other bucks, that were lingering around. They were just waiting for their opportunity. Well, they blocked us from being able to close that distance. So we had to wait for the right time and make a couple more loops in there and everything. So that's kind of a little bit of an example of what you described there, and it's probably a little longer than 5 minutes.
Gotcha. Well, that makes total sense. So let's go back to the comment you made about you don't get emotionally attached to a spot or to a deer.
No.
Did that come from trial and error? Or is that just because if a hunter comes in, then there's no big deal. You just move on. And does that make you more flexible?
It definitely makes us a lot more flexible. I think it was something that we I don't remember how it came to us, but I feel like it was something that we just kind of naturally realized once we started hunting public land and on the ground. I think it was around 2010 when we kind of realized that, where we're bumping around and we're hitting all these pieces of public, and we're getting all these opportunities that we would have never gotten if we would have been more passive or more like in the past, where we go in, hang some sets, and wait to see what happens. Well, all of a sudden, I think it dawned on us, you know, what's going on here is we're not getting emotionally attached to these spots. We could take it or leave it. There's another spot just up the road, or, you know, 20 minutes drive or whatever. Right around the corner, there's more opportunities. There's more spots. It's not that big a deal. Another hunter comes along. Oh, such is life. It's public land. That's the way it is. No big deal. It's probably not the spot I want to be anyway. That type of mentality, I think that's when we realized, hey, we're not really locking ourselves down here. And I guess in a way, I think the more that's partly why I don't pre-scout anymore, is because pre-scouting, the only thing I need to know the day I show up to hunt is whether that spot is hot or not. And the only way I'm going to know that is the day I'm there hunting. Mm-hmm. And too many times in the past, I look back at spots that I pre-scouted, and what would happen is I would go there in the fall, and I wouldn't hit it most of the times when it was actually hot. So then you end up kind of waiting for it, and by the time you're waiting for it, you're kind of slowly burning that spot out too, or you completely miss it, because spots, a lot of times they go hot and cold for just a few short days, many times. But in the meantime, the more time I invest in a spot, and I think this goes for not just myself, but I think just us as humans, the more we invest in anything, whether it's working on a car, whether it's a relationship, whether it's, pre-scouting this one piece or this one spot or figuring out this deer, we're going to begin to attach ourselves to that. And we're going to have the more we do it, the more we have a hard time letting go. So what would happen before when I used to pre-scout is I'd get my hopes all up. I'd imagine how it's all going to unfold. And then I'd almost want to see it through. Like, there's no way. I envisioned it too strong. It's got to happen. And then all of a sudden, we're halfway through the season or halfway through the rut, or spent the better part of the week hunting this one spot that we had built this imagination that it was going to be great all year long, I guess you could kind of say.
Right.
And so what I've found in recent years is by hunting on the ground, I can just, I'm not emotionally attaching myself to these spots, so I can just boom, 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 just keep moving. Whether another hunter shows up, whether that spot's cold, it doesn't matter. I just keep moving until I find when they're hot. And when they're hot, I'm there. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Dusty, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha. So would you recommend that people give this a shot instead of hanging tight on their tree stand that they were going to hunt that day?
I would say each person's got to define what hunting is to them and whether it's for them or not. I do what I do, or we do what we do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be that way for anybody else. A lot of people enjoy pre-scouting and figuring spots out, and enjoy running cameras, and enjoy the tree stand sets or the ground blind sets, and things like that. And as long as they're having a good time and enjoying it, then I would say stick with that. And if it's working, stick with that. Einstein defined insanity of doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So, let's say if somebody's listening right now and they're saying, wow, the last few years I haven't been getting the results I'm looking for, but I don't believe this works, I would say, why not try it and see what you got to lose?
Right.
If you're not happy with what you've been getting. And I've had, like I said, many, many people that have came to me and said, I would have never thought this would have worked, or I could have done this or that. And so I think people will find that they'd be surprised at what they can accomplish hunting on the ground, or still hunting, or stalking, going after an animal.
So, I'm going to back you on that. I've got $4 on the wall that were stationary ground and pounds. That it's something, it's really something to experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing, is you've experienced that, and a lot of people haven't. That on the ground, close, right there, you're at eye level. I call it being in the same world. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You can almost. Yeah, go ahead.
You can almost sense their actions before they do it when you're right there on the ground with them.
Right, and that any second they're gonna peg you.
Yeah, for sure. And it was one of them things where, not trying to tell story time here for myself, but I found a spot where the bucks were actually crossing between two tree lines, and there was like a low area there. I know that they was crossing there. There was tracks and markings of some nice hooves. Obviously I can see what a nice buck hoof looks like, and they was crossing there. It was a major corridor for them, and you know, I just set up right there on the major corridor, and there it happened 4 times back to back consecutively.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. Four back to back.
4 years in a row, same spot. My brother couldn't believe it. I took him with me because he did not believe me.
And that's something you found because you're roaming. Is that correct, Dusty?
Yeah, actually driving down the road, and I happened to see him cross there several times. I'm like, man, that's a great spot. And the guy that I hunted on owned the land. He said, yeah, go right ahead. Sure enough, got in there and smashed 4 in a row.
Wow. Very interesting.
That's incredible. Now, I've got a question for you that came to mind when you were talking about that is, you know, you said you got all 4 of those on the ground, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Setting on my butt on the ground and growed up grass.
Sure. And so there wasn't really a whole lot of options for maybe a tree set there, or was there? There was options there, yeah, absolutely. Sure. But it felt that the concave of the area, you know, it had like a natural valley there. And all I could pick out driving down the road was heads crossing through there. I was like, man, that looks real interesting. There must be a hill there that falls off. And it was just a dip in the ground. It was probably 6 foot, maybe, almost like a waterway. Okay. And well, when you're telling that story right away, it made me think that since I've started hunting on the ground, there's a lot of situations I find myself in where I'm like, oh, this is a great spot. And I look around just thinking, like, where would I have ever put a tree stand here? Right. I agree to that. Absolutely. You know, so I guess I wasn't sure whether there was or wasn't, but and even when you do have that available tree stand, like in your spot, you found that there was a spot there on the ground where it just felt more natural to be it, you know, and to set up on them. It's real interesting, you know. It's something that I can admit that I missed that spot. I probably still can hunt that spot, and I haven't. You know, I've moved on to different adventures, but I missed that spot just because it was so rewarding to what I call ground and pound. Yeah. It was unique, you know. I'm listening to you talk, and just, you know, it gives me the same feeling. I know that feeling, and it's an unbelievable feeling. Yep. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I like being on eye level with the deer. I think that's the thrill of a lifetime right there, and you can do it over and over once you figure out how to get close. How close? I mean, some of your videos that you've been so close, you probably could have reached out and touched them on the nose. If I'm not mistaken, Jared, is that how close do you like to get before you take the shot?
Well, there's no doubt about it. I like them as close as I can possibly get them for a couple of reasons. You know, years ago, I used to get excited about shooting deer at, you know, say 60 yards. And whatnot, or long range, we'll just say that. Yeah. You know, but, you know, I did that a few times, and it's you know, neat to say, hey, I pulled off that shot. But there's something about, for right now, I'm on this, like, how close can I get kick kind of almost. Gotcha. And the closer you can get, the more of a rush and excitement that you get. Now, we haven't been close enough to touch any yet, but, you know, I've had, you know, a few different individuals outside of, you know, our videos and stuff that have come up to me at a show or whatever and told me stories about situations where they've, you know, hunted on the ground and touched this deer or been a yard away, you know. I shot, the closest one I've ever shot was last season, and that was right in that 7 yards, or, you know, right basically we'll say 7 yards. It was 6.5, 7 yards. Right. That's the closest that I've shot one at. And we've had many of them inside of 15 yards that we've shot, and that's right where we like them. Now, are you shooting? You know, one other. Go ahead.
Is when you're shooting that close, are you using a compound, or is this a recurve?
The rest of the guys use compound, and I used compound up until 2011 was the last time I shot a compound. Okay. And that was the last season I hunted with a compound. In fact, the last arrow I shot out of a compound was at a deer that I missed. Gotcha. In 2011. Since then, yes, I've taken up the longbow. You know, but even like Shay, my partner there, he's taken several inside of 15 yards on the ground, which brings up another interesting aspect that we've kind of discovered over the last few seasons is on the ground, your shot angles can be different. Yes. In fact, a lot of times we find that we get caught in situations where a head-on shot is all we've got, or that deer whether that deer sees us in the head-on shot is all we got, or it's literally going to walk us right over. And it kind of came as an accident in 2010. I had one come up, and it was right at like 19 or 20 yards. I was already drawn back on it, had the pin on it, and it was walking, and I was waiting for it to maybe stop, and all of a sudden, rather than stop, I didn't want to stop it because I was fully exposed right there. All of a sudden, it just turned and started walking right at me, and then I was like, oh, this thing's going to spot me. Well, it spotted me. And then, I didn't know what to do. I've never shot a deer head on. All right. So I had the pin right on its chest, and I'm like, I should probably just wait. Maybe it'll turn. Like, it had me spotted, and it hadn't busted yet. And I was like, it could turn just enough before it takes off to give me a shot. And I'm waiting. And obviously I'm holding the compound. It's as the seconds roll by, I'm getting a little weaker. Well, all of a sudden my finger popped off the trigger, like off it. And then I went to set it back on, and I set it on a little too hard. And thankfully I had the pin right there, right dead center in the chest space.
Yep.
And at first I was like, oh no, what did I do here? Because I'd always heard it was a bad shot, bad angle, don't do that. Right. But, it turned out to be, a great blood trail. The animal only went, maybe 100, 110 yards. And it made me evaluate, like, why was that such a lethal shot when I've heard forever that it's not? And I realized that, it's pretty easy to see why. From the ground level, you don't have that angle. Like, that's I think, a lot more of a dangerous shot from, say, a tree stand angle. But from the ground level, you don't have that angle. So there's so many different vitals that your arrow gets to, right, when that animal is facing head on. And since then, we almost pray for that shot. That's like the shot that we want. It seems like most deer, and looking back on it too, most of the deer that I've seen, you heard about or whatever, they're most of the time broadside deer. Even from a tree stand angle, but I still think that that's probably the best angle from a tree stand. But getting back to the ground side of it, we've had phenomenal results head on. The quickest, the deer, they don't go very far and last very long from that shot, it seems like. And it seems like I don't want to say it can't go wrong. Any angle could, but it's really surprised us. And I don't know why I got talking about that, but maybe it's just one of those things where if we didn't take that shot, there'd probably be a lot of, times where that deer, got away if we would have waited.
Gotcha. Do you feel that you have to adjust your shot being that close? Do you practice at a closer range than normal?
I guess shooting the longbow, I do. I shoot at, close, but, I also shoot out a little ways too. I think it's a little bit easier on some of those close shots, at least from the ground level, and when things are happening fast, the longbow definitely has its advantages. Right. As far as the compound goes, I guess I haven't really had that conversation to know how close the other guys really practice. But I'm sure they've practiced and shot it to make sure they're on at 10 yards. But, the deer, I think they do reach a certain point where the closer they get, it's almost like it's the harder, right. A lot. I don't know. There's just something about it. Yeah. I do think it can be a little more difficult at, say, 10 yards than 15 or 20. And then you go to like 25 to 35, and those deer have enough time to react so quickly, and yet they're close enough to, they're close enough to where when that bow goes off, especially if they've already seen you, they can react a lot. But it's almost like they get past that. They get more out 40, 45, 50 yards or more. Even it seems like they don't react nearly as much. So I guess I've found that 25 to 35 yards is a very dangerous range, just because those, at least for whitetails, they can react so quick. And then we've had really good results close range. But Shay had one last year that was, 10, 12 yards away, something like that. And to this day, we have no idea what went wrong. He's been a phenomenal shot. He's shot deer, inside of 15 yards, 9, 12 yards. And we still don't know what happened, but the first shot, he missed that deer. And that might be a prime example of they get that close, things can, it does get a little more difficult.
Right. Because we always talk about taking, practicing at the 20, 30, 40 yard, maybe even 50 or 60 yard pins, but we very rarely talk about the 10-yard shot or the 15-yard shot.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and I think that's partly due to a lot of times, most hunters are stationary hunters, and they might have, stands set, and a lot of times they strategically place those so they're not insanely right on top of the deer,
right.
really close. So that's maybe why we're so accustomed to practicing more at that kind of almost like 20 yards is the minimum that we'd start at a lot of times.
Gotcha.
And I can definitely relate to that. Back when I used to shoot a compound, 20 yards is probably about as close as I got to the target when I shot.
Right.
But we also weren't getting as close on deer back then as we are now.
Gotcha.
I got to do a quick gear rundown. You're talking 7-yard shots. What kind of camouflage you guys wearing?
That's I wouldn't say it's anything state of the art. In fact, I've got kind of a wool snow camo-ish vest. It's not too white anymore, but a lot of times that's what I wear out in the woods, even if there's no snow, like with the fall leaves. And then I'll have like an olive green shirt with sleeves. It's just solid olive green sleeves, and maybe a brown hat. There's probably there's definitely a lot better options that we could choose. Probably. However, in my experience of dealing with deer, by far the biggest factor is picking your times to move. It almost doesn't matter what camouflage you're gonna. I haven't come across any camouflage yet that if that deer's looking towards me, I'm allowed to move. If that kind of makes sense.
Right. I agree. I agree to that.
And not to say that there aren't better, options out there than what I use. I just kind of like to break it up a little bit, and deer don't see the same types of, color, all the colors that we see.
Right.
And so that's not so much of an issue as much as, say, like the pattern and how you break it up. I think a lot of times too, deer, they associate your shoulders and head, that part of your body is what they recognize as a human a lot of times. So sometimes when I'm getting close on a deer, I found myself in this situation many times where I call it the cat crouch or the cat-like position, where with a longbow you can pull this off. With a compound you really can't, because you have to shoot it upright. But I'll get right on my knees kind of, and I'll just almost lay flat to the ground, but in a way that I can quickly kind of just come up when I need to. But that breaks up my whole head and shoulders outline. So they have a harder time, they might see me, but they might not be able to detect what it is yet. And that might buy me a little bit more time. So I would say, though, by far, when you move is the key. And when I move, if I'm sneaking up on an animal, and it's always a white, that's all I hunt is deer. When I'm sneaking up on them, I'm never really moving unless I'm looking at them, because there's many times where all of a sudden you just have to put on the brakes mid-step or whatever. And I've found many times whitetails will pick you off. It's like, just like when you sometimes think you see something out of your corner of your eye, like, what was that? And you look over and you don't see anything, and you kind of look for maybe 10 seconds more. Oh, well, maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me, right? Well, whitetails will do that, except for since there's predators out there to get them, they'll stay in tune with you for minutes sometimes. So you got to hold that stance for minutes. And then they always do this. They'll drop their head down to pretend like they aren't looking anymore. And that's when, in my early years, I'd go to take a step and they'd have me and they'd be like, yep, I'm out of here. But now I just wait for it. Like, yep, it's going to drop its head and pretend like it's not looking. It's going to pretend like it's eating or whatever. And it always does. And it always, all of a sudden, will snap up its head to try and catch you again. And you play that game for 5-10 minutes, and all of a sudden you can tell I guess that's nothing at all, and they kind of forget about you, and then you can go on your way. And it doesn't always work, but throughout the season, that happens repetitively with us. Situations come up like that. So that's another little thing that I've learned along the way.
And that's just something that you picked up along the way, that, it's kind of like a tip that if you wait them out, that they might, go ahead and overlook you and go back to living their normal self.
Right. I always, if they haven't completely left the area yet, they either haven't determined exactly what you are or haven't decided that you're a big enough threat yet, one or the other. And usually it's just, I think, that they haven't determined for 100% that you are what they think you might be.
Right. I agree to that. Is there any particular boots that you wear while you're doing all this snooking?
Let's see, the last 3 seasons, maybe even 4. Now, the only thing that I've really worn is low-top hiking shoes. That's all I really wear. In fact, I've enjoyed wearing them so much that I keep about 3 pairs with me in case they get wet. When you're covering that much ground and you're on your feet that much, it's just really nice. And I've got larger feet for my size. I'm almost up to a size 12, and lugging around all that weight, it gets to be a lot if you're trying to, move gracefully through woods or whatever. So I found low top hiking shoes just allow me to walk all day and not feel like my feet are heavy. And when I get in situations where I need to crawl or I need to slow down my pace, I can, like let's say I'm halfway through a step and all of a sudden one spots me. I don't have so much weight on my leg. And I can't think of anybody that I haven't had wear a pair of low top hiking shoes with me that hasn't been like, this works out really nice. I like this. There's been times, where we got to get into, cross creeks or whatever like that. So what I'll do then is I'll bring a pair of knee-high rubber boots, and I'll just carry my shoes with me and use the knee-highs when I need to, unless I'm in wet stuff all the time.
All right. Gotcha.
So yeah, I know that's a little unorthodox and everything, but that's what I do, and I prefer low top hiking shoes, I guess.
Cool.
The other thing too, when you're moving like that, your feet don't really get, or at least mine don't really get so cold, because even moving just a little bit makes a big difference.
Yeah, it keeps the circulation flowing for sure. Is there any particular type of scent cover that you guys would use while you're doing that?
Not really, and there's a couple of reasons why. You can definitely beat a deer's nose. I don't believe that you can't. I used to do it back when I hunted alone. I almost got cocky about it to the point where, I'd almost like let him go downwind. Like, if I was going to shoot him, like, hey, I've got a better shot down there anyway. Like, you can do it. You go through all the steps, and, I'd wear the carbon masks, and the trick to that I found is you throw them in the dryer after every time, the masks. And if I didn't wear the mask, it was almost like game over. They had me. It got to that point where, so back when I hunted solo like that, I figured out how to do it. And it wasn't really an issue. But now, and a lot of, here, this was back when I hunted, like 1 or 2 spots right there near where I lived. And, I could keep, after I'm done hunting, I'm right back at the house. There's a washer dryer, whatever it was simple to do it. But now on all of our, public land adventures, we might drive through the night to a state, and right away we get there, we're checking stuff out, and, we haven't really, we don't really smell the best, but we don't really, we'd have to stop at a hotel and show everything up, and then you get so run down checking places out throughout the day that when you finally do get to a motel, let's say you've gotten your hunting clothes have gotten so, sweated up or whatever, you might have a couple days worth of clothes, but by the time you get into your day 2 or 3, you're pretty run down, and by the time you get done hunting for the day, you just want to crash. You don't want to, it almost would stress you out to the point where and we tried to keep a system for beating their nose, but I think it just came down to, 2 people out there in the woods and covering the kind of ground we cover and stuff. It was just really hard to keep consistently beating their nose. So now it's just like we don't really stress out with and keep a system to any degree other than, when we spot them, we just try and, either stay downwind, or a lot of times we can't. It just doesn't allow us to work downwind. So we'll do what I call cheat the wind, where if you've got a consistently blowing wind where it's not swirling or changing direction much, I'll keep it to where they have to pretty much be right on that scent stream in those situations to be able to smell you. So we'll come in a way that they almost feel like they're downwind of any danger, but we'll keep it so our scent stream is just off them, if that kind of makes sense. And a lot of times that's the best route to come in on because they feel safe that way. They're looking from the direction that they can't smell,
right.
And using their nose. And not always are they doing that, but if you can get good at learning how to do that, that's a really good technique. Or, a lot of times we'll work at them crosswind. And that's the other thing, too. From the ground, you can manipulate that a little bit better, using the wind. Because with a stationary setup, you're at the mercy of however that deer moves in on you. And there's definitely times where we're out on our feet and it's like, shoot, that one got us. He smelt us. I can several times in a season that happens to us. But once we have them spotted, usually we can, get in a situation where they're not going to be able to smell us. So
when you do spot them, you try to go in downwind of where they are?
Once we spot them, if the downwind is the best, what I like to do is, let's say I spot one. First thing I'm going to do is try and gauge, okay, what's this deer doing? If he's on his feet, is he moving, or do I get the feeling he's going to be headed somewhere quickly, or is he just kind of going to be there a little while? If he's going to be there a little while, I'm probably going to try and make an attempt to move in on him right then and there. If I sense that he's going someplace, or I can see that he's going somewhere, I'm going to try and figure out how I can get ahead of him. And then last resort is, if there's no way to do either one of those, then I'm going to maybe try to call to him. But most of the time, in my experience, calling can kind of be iffy, and at best, it gives away your location a lot of times. So I don't like to do that. A lot of times I like to lay quiet unless that's the last option. Or unless I've got one that's, across the line, and I'm need them on public in order to do anything with them. Then I might try, then I'll try calling.
Right.
But outside of that, I like to lay quiet. But once I determine whether I'm going to move in on him or where he's going or where I think he's going, then it's like, okay, how do I need to get there so that he doesn't smell me? Or what's the best route that he's not going to see me but still not smell me, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And a lot of times it isn't coming straight in from downwind. A lot of times it's using a crosswind or using kind of like what I described, where he feels like I'm coming in from upwind, maybe, in a lot of these situations, but it's not blowing directly. The wind is blowing in a consistent direction. It's not swaying. So therefore he's going to have to be right on that scent stream. And I'm sure you've noticed this sitting in your stationary set where you've got a consistently blowing wind and you just keep checking your wind and it keeps blowing the same way. And you have to have that deer shot before it gets right there.
Oh yeah. You're pegged off right off the bat. If it gets to that direct wind smell, you're done.
Right. And so I'll do the same thing, but sneaking in on a deer where okay, I'm basing, he thinks he can smell everything up in here, but he really can't, until I get directly on that scent stream. So does that kind of make sense or not really?
Yep.
Yeah. It's one of the things where to explain that a little further, you find exactly where that breaking point is that you can push to before you get busted.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of times their guard is down trying to watch that little sliver where they think they can smell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, agreed.
Yep. Jared, there was one moment in a video where looks like you were pursuing a whitetail. You were getting close, but then the hunter that was on the film said, "Don't move, don't move, don't move." How important is it when you're getting that close to know when to move and when not to?
That's the most important thing.
Okay.
Right there. Is knowing when to move, when not to move. And that's why when you're sneaking in on a deer, you absolutely have to keep eye contact with that animal or with all the other animals around. So let's say there's 3-4 deer. You can't move and be looking at the ground. You have to use your feet and feel. And, a lot of times I'll put my head where I can just move my eyeballs and look at the ground, without moving my head.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So let's say I'm not moving. My body isn't moving at all. I'm looking at these deer and I'll just glance at the ground before I move to pick where I want to step, and then, so I don't have to move my head at all. So minimal movement and picking your times to move. Picking your times to move is by far the biggest factor. And then the next biggest factor when you're getting close to that animal on the ground is it's probably going to happen really fast at that moment when it's like now or never. And the more you do it, you'll figure out when and what's going to happen. You'll be able to predict it a lot more. And what I mean by that is I shot a buck here last month, and we had spotted this deer from about a half a mile away up on this hill, and we had almost got him the night before. But so we kind of knew he was in the area. When we spotted him, we got up on this big hill and sat there for a few hours. The next day, middle of the day, we spotted him get up and then bed back down in this tall grass. We knew we weren't going to be able to move in close enough to get a shot because we couldn't even tell exactly where he was bedded in there. We just knew that he disappeared in this grass. He's there. So we quickly moved in and covered the ground. Like I had kind of described earlier, we covered as much ground as quickly as we could without, while still staying concealed, which was very key as well in this particular situation, because we were about 30 yards from where we wanted to be, which was we were about 50, 60 yards from where we knew this deer kind of was. And we were still 30 yards from where we wanted to get, and all of a sudden he came trotting out of this grass. So he's about 60 yards out or so. And I think he just came trotting out to do a little feeding or something, just a little snack for a few minutes, and he was going to jump back in his bed. So if we wouldn't have moved as quickly as we had right there to close that distance, we wouldn't have been in the right situation right there. But let's move on a little bit further. So a couple minutes goes by, and this smaller 9-pointer comes walking right in on top of us, maybe 15 yards away. And this big buck, he can't see what's going on here. And this 9-pointer busts us because we were pretty much in the wide open. We had a little bit of knee-high grass, but we were kind of on this little crest of this hill. This 9-pointer was down a little dip, so we were basically skyline to him, and he took off out of there. Well, he got way out around in front of this big deer before this big one realized what was going on. Except by this point, this big one, he didn't know where the danger was now, because he didn't see all this go down. And there was a doe right next to him that was getting all nervous just as he was, and they didn't know what to do. And all at once, this doe turns and starts running right down to us. And I know that we're kind of we're pretty exposed. We're going to get busted. So this big one's following this doe down, just trotting on a trot,
Yep.
50, 40, 30, and there's just a little tiny bit of grass in front of us. He's 25 yards away, closing, and it's, I know that any second he's going to pop his head up and he's going to see us. And all at once, he got to like 16 yards, and his head went to crack. But I was waiting for that exact instant. Like, I knew it was coming. He's going to see us. As soon as he cracks his head, it's time to draw and shoot. Don't think about it. Just do it. And it literally happened that quick, 1 to 2 seconds. But in my, 2 or 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have gotten that deer, because I wouldn't have had the experience to know like exactly what's going to happen here. Now, and that's what happens on the ground a lot of times, is there's situations, maybe not necessarily like that. Maybe they're just walking in on you, and all of a sudden they spot you. It's not going to take them very long. You got to pick your times to draw and all of that. And so that's kind of the second most important thing I'd say. Once you get within that bow range, that's a huge factor that it's very important. I don't know how to describe it, but
right.
But
that makes sense. If you had to pick one tip, and only one tip, what's your number one tip that you would want to share with others to make them better deer hunters?
Number one tip, I would say that the number one thing over my hunting career, outside of choosing to hunt public land that goes on a whole nother tangent, or reasons why. But outside of that, I would say the number one thing I would say is don't be afraid to go after a deer and be mobile. And that's definitely the turning point of ever since I started hunting exclusively on the ground. Those are the best seasons I've ever had,
right? For
sure. And it has every season ramped up more and more. And it would never be to the point that it is if we didn't hunt on the ground like we do. And I have had people that have said, why don't you guys hunt out of tree stands? I think it's silly to hunt but I think they maybe forget that, we're trying to make a public land video, and 1, 2, 3, 4 big buck kills in a season would be an unbelievable season, but it's not good enough to where people are going to be excited to pick up the new Whitetail Adrenaline video.
Gotcha.
We needed to ramp that up. And so hunting on the ground has definitely got us a lot better results. And I don't feel like we have some crazy gifts, I guess you could say. Like, I'm the only one that can stalk deer, or you know what I mean?
Right. You're not super hunters. You're everyday guys
exactly.
that just kind of figured out how to do this thing.
Right, exactly. I feel like, a lot of people that I meet, I feel like I could go out in the woods with them and we could stalk whitetails,
Gotcha.
Most hunters, I think, could do it. So, I would say that's my number one thing that I would suggest giving a whirl. But also, a person's got to decide what ultimately gets them excited about hunting. And if, there was a point as well where I was a little bit almost burnt out on hunting. So I had to redefine what really makes me tick. And, that's also, part of why I love the public land and everything, and hunting on the ground. Those two things right there definitely make me tick, I guess you could say.
Gotcha. I love it. Jared, this has been awesome. And I think this is probably the fastest hour we've ever gone through. In fact, we've gone over, and it's crazy. It feels like we've been talking for 10 minutes.
Right. Well, no, I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for getting a hold of me. And, I hope the viewers, or listeners, not viewers, right?
Listeners, right.
I hope they get something out of it and, can utilize something from it.
Definitely.
Have a successful season.
How can we get a hold of you or buy your DVDs or find your websites? Where can we find you?
Our website's whitetail.adrenaline.com. So pretty easy to remember. Whitetail Adrenaline with an E at the end.
Okay, yep.
And then we do have a Facebook page under Whitetail Adrenaline as well, if people kind of want to keep up a little bit on what's going on. I will admit I'm not the best about posting content too regularly.
Okay. All right. No problem.
That, I just kind of get caught up with, the business end of things and everything that goes on there to keep the company moving forward and stable and everything. And so, that's the two places, I guess, to find us, and find, all of our videos and stuff, and preview videos, trailer videos. People can check them out on our website. So.
Awesome. So cool. Dusty, do you have any last questions for Jared?
I don't. I definitely like Jared's tip. If you haven't went out and tried to hunt off the ground, you only live once. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail doing it, but it's the experience. And the fails are maps to success when it comes to ground and pound, as I would call it.
Right.
That's an awesome tip. Go
Snooking.
try it out.
Snooking.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And that's very, snooking. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I never talked about the failure, and there is failure with it, but that's part of the progression and getting from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have failed attempts and failed tries, but you know what? That's also what keeps it exciting, So.
Yeah, absolutely. Success. I was told by an old timer one time, failure is a map to success. If you don't fail, you don't figure nothing out.
Right.
That's right.
Very true.
You're absolutely correct.
Jared, this has been fantastic.
Okay.
But man, thank you so much for joining us on the Big Buck Podcast. Yeah. Meant a lot to us and meant a lot to everybody listening. I'm positive.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me on, and it was great to talk about, get you guys interacted and everything. So
awesome, man. All right. Well, we'd love to have you back for round 2, because I feel like we really just touched on the tip of the iceberg here, if that would be cool.
Yeah, I'd definitely be game for that. So,
awesome.
You guys just whenever let me know.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jared. I appreciate it. So that was the fastest hour and 20 minutes I think I've ever experienced.
Oh, by far. Where did it go?
I was so zoned in on this guy, listening to every little detail, that it felt like 10 minutes.
Yeah, how could you not be zoned in when he's talking about something that normally doesn't happen? I mean, anytime you can take and put a mature buck on the ground, from the ground, that's taking your hunt to the next level.
There is nothing I love better than getting 10 yards away from a whitetail, looking them in the eyes, and taking a shot.
Yeah, I got a video from you not too long ago of you literally right up in a deer's area.
Right. Yeah, that was
right there.
5 yards away.
Yeah, that was insane.
I love getting that close. Love that.
It's a challenge.
Yes, and that's why I love Jared Scheffler and the way he hunts on the ground with a bow, public land. It epitomizes the very essence of that pure hunter.
I may have picked up some slang tonight, some snooking slang.
Yeah, I love the snook word. I'm going to go snooking a lot this year.
Right on.
Just awesome stuff.
I hope that everybody that listens goes snooking and let us know about it, how it turned out.
Yep. I want to see it. I want some results. And don't be afraid to get out of your stand and get close, because it can happen.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The rut's a great time to be adventuring, what I would call ground and pound. That's how I refer to it. And, the rut's an awesome, awesome time to get out there and do that because they're moving. The deer are naturally moving. They're not bedded up. They're not necessarily nocturnal at that time of year when the rut's in. And, I suggest you get out there and hit it and try to make that kill shot from the ground. It's a cool experience.
I just encourage everybody to try it at least once. And I'd be willing to bet that if you had some success, you're not going to go back to the stand. But just a hunch. Do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week, Dusty?
We do. It's getting close to the rut, and I'm going to suggest that you use your doe and heat urine. Put it out. Drag, get you a rope tied around your boot. Put you a piece of any kind of old sock, anything that you can spray or dump the doe and heat urine on the rag. Drag that from your truck all the way to your setup. If you've got to walk a long distance, refresh that rag about halfway, midway point. Dump a little more pee or spray a little more doe and heat pee on there. Drag that rag in there and douse down the area where you're hunting. Make them curious. Make them mature bucks. Think they're on a hot doe. They'll run right into you. Guaranteed. It's happened many a times.
I like it. And are you going to use some of the Northwoods Common Sense this year?
Absolutely. I can't say enough about Dean Banyard at Northwood Common Sense. I stuck my buck on I was using the buck with torso from Northwoods last year. I made 4 mock scrapes one evening. I backed out after I made them. The next morning, I smoked my buck right there, and he was sniffing the mock scrapes.
That's awesome. I mean, that's as a testament to Dean's products. And he's not paying us to say this. I just like his products.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first got the bottle out to the house here in Ohio from New Hampshire, I cracked the lid on. I had to smell it. It's the hunt neck thing to do is smell the deer pee.
Right. It might be a hunt neck if you open up your freshest bottle of dopey and smell it.
Absolutely. But, I checked it out. I smelled it, and it was different from any other product I've ever smelled. And I'm not saying that because he's paying us. He is not paying us. We have nothing going on with Northwoods Common Sense, but I'm telling you, I love it. I really, really, really love it. It's I'm actually just getting ready to use it myself, the doe and heat, again this year, and I think that I'm going to have some huge results.
Yep. I love the the buck tarsal and the doe and heat stuff. Seems to get me close every single time I go in the woods. And it's almost unbelievable how good it works.
Yeah, really it is, and like I said, I'm saying this from my heart, not because
yes, saying it from my heart, and because I've used it, and no perks at all other than I just like it. So this is just a conversation.
Right, absolutely. My brother was all down and out about his season last year. I said, hey, you're going to Southern Ohio, ain't you? And he said, yeah. I hated the buck with torso. I said, make 4 or 5 mock scrapes and see what happens. Sure enough, he smoked his buck sniffing the scrapes.
Awesome, man.
It was cool, and that's another testimony, and we can have him on the show and testify to it.
Yep.
That, that buck came right in, was checking them scrapes because of the Northwoods Common Sense buck with torso.
And Dean's coming up. He's going to join us again, right, on the show? I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
You booked Dean?
And we're going to talk some more about properly applying deer urines and how to set your woods up to kill big bucks.
Awesome. Excellent, man. Well, it's been a great show. Just learned a ton. Always a pleasure, my friend, to have you on with us and talk some deer hunting every single week.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure with you too, Jay, and we hope the listeners learn something from this show. And we look forward to every show just because we know that we're bringing the facts and throwing the good cards on the table.
Definitely. How can we find you, Dusty?
Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Facebook.com/Dusty Hunt Neck.
Dusty Hunt Neck, getting it done.
You might be a hunt neck. Hey, Jay, how can the people reach out to you at the Big Buck Registry?
All right. First and foremost, I'd like to invite you to join us on iTunes at bigbuckregistry.com/iTunes if you're an Apple user, and listen to our content. Let us know how you feel about it. Leave us a review, 5-star preferably, and subscribe to the show. That would be excellent. And tell your hunting buddies about this show, because if you got good stuff out of this, if you got some good content out of this and it's helping you become a better hunter, then your hunting buddy needs to know that too. So share all the content as you see fit. You can reach us over at the blog page, which is www.bigbuckregistry.com/ no, there is no / www.bigbuckregistry.com. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com / bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, twitter.com / bigbuckregistry. And I'd love for you to give us a call at 724-613-2825. Tell us how you feel about the show. Give us some reviews. Whether you hate us or love us, I don't care. I'd like to hear it. And if you would like to submit a photo of your deer to the Big Buck Wall of Fame, which is our Facebook page, which we're around 120,000 viewers now, so you're going to be famous for at least a day, send it to www.bigbuckregistry.com / mybuck. And if you're an outdoor outfit out there, if you have a hunting crew and you started a Facebook page and you'd like to do a share for share with us, happy to set you up with that. Go to www.bigbuckregistry.com / S4S and just follow the instructions. I'm done.
Huh. Yeah.
Gotta breathe, man. Breathe.
No, you gotta take a breather.
God, man, that's a lot to say.
That's awesome, though. Check us out. Definitely go to iTunes and give us a review. And if you would, give us a 5-star on your review. And we want to hear your feedback on the show. And, we do it for the listeners. We're here for you guys. Obviously it helps us out, and we know it helps you out. But we want to hear how it helped you and what you've done to take your hunt to the next level.
Exactly. Excellent. I think that's a wrap, brother.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm Dusty Phillips.
And I'm Jay Scott, and this is the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. See you next week.
Can't wait.